Hello, everybody. My name is Dratnos, and today we're going to take a look at the Sand Lane Death Knight, which is the hero talent tree shared by Blood and Unholy Death Knights. Sand Lane are Death Knights who have mastered the vampiric arts of the Darkfallen. They consume the vitality of their enemies to protect and restore themselves. Their endless hunger only strengthens them. Sand Lane have a strong, vampire theme. The ICC has a Sand Lane trio boss in the Blood Wing. So that's kind of been around since then. Sort of makes sense that it's themed around Death Knight, although I will say there has been a talent in the Shadow Priest tree called Sand Lane for ages as well. So, but that is, I think it's still a cool theme for Blood, at least. It definitely feels more Blood themed than Unholy. So we'll have to see how they make this one work for both of those. So let's get started with the talent tree mock-up. The top of the tree has Vampiric Strike, which says your Death Coil and Death Strike. Okay, so there's a way for this to kind of proc equally for Unholy and Blood, because, Unholy presses a lot of Death Coils, and Blood presses a lot of Death Strikes. They both have a 10% chance to make your next Heart Strike or Scourge Strike become Vampiric Strike. Vampiric Strike heals you for 3% of max HP, and grants you Essence of the Blood Queen, increasing haste by 1.5% up to 7.5% for 20 seconds. So the self-heal here, a passive small self-heal, that's going to be nice for Unholy to just have that rotationally a little bit. And then the 7.5% haste. So if you can maintain a 7.5% haste buff, that's really nice for both of these specs. But Death Coil and Death Strike only have a 10% chance to make your next Heart Strike or Scourge Strike become Vampiric Strike. So on average, you need to press 10 Death Strikes or Death Coils within a 20-second window to get one Vampiric Strike and get one stack of this, and, extend it instead of having the buff fall off, which I think is going to happen sometimes, but not often, not all the time. I think getting up to 7.5% and holding it for a long time is going to be tough. On the other hand, if you get enough haste, then your GCD can get low enough, you can maybe do this. I don't know. This seems, I bet that's going to be a little frustrating, but we'll see how that actually plays out. And then the small little HP heal on it, that's going to be pretty much, counterintuitively, this actually matters a lot less for Blood than for Unholy. For Unholy, randomly proccing, maybe 3% max HP heals over the course of a minute or something, or maybe 3, or maybe something like that, is nice, right? That's a nice sizable chunk of HPS for themselves. For Blood, that's going to be almost entirely negligible compared to the fact that they're death striking for their full health bar every few globals, right? Okay, let's start with the... I'm not sure how we want to do this. I guess let's start with... We'll do this side by side instead of row by row. I think probably makes the most sense. So let's talk about the left wing of this talent tree. We start off with a choice node. You either have Newly Turned, Raise Ally revives players at full health, and grants you an Absorb Shield equal to 20% of your max HP. That's nice. I like that a lot. A lot of times, so especially as a Blood DK, casting Raise Ally, you're giving up Runic Power and a Global, 2 valuable resources to heal your ally, or to raise an ally. Getting an Absorb Shield on top of this actually makes this a lot less likely that you're going to die as a result of casting Raise Ally. And of course, having them res at full health is actually nice too. The other option, though, is Vampiric Speed, which says Death's Advance and Wraithwalk movement speed bonuses are increased by 10%, and activating either one increases 4 nearby allies' movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds. This seems too powerful to ever pass up on, unfortunately. I think this is going to be the default one in this row, despite the fact that Newly Turned would be nice quality of life. I think Vampiric Speed is just way more powerful, and is the better one if they stay at this power level. So I hope they look into moving that around, perhaps. Because I don't think this will be a real choice node. I think this is 99% of players are gonna pick Vampiric Speed. Infliction of Sorrow. When Vampiric Strike damages an enemy affected by Blood Plague or Virulent Plague, which should be all enemies, it consumes the disease, dealing 200% of remaining damage. While Gift of the Sand Lane is active, Vampiric Strike no longer consumes your disease, and it instead extends the duration of your disease by 3 seconds and deals 20% of the remaining damage to the enemy. Now, this is interesting. Gift of the Sand Lane, I assume, yeah, that's the bottom talent of this tree. So, counterintuitively, I wonder if this is actually going to be worse, right? Consuming the disease, but having it deal double its damage, versus extending the disease and having it deal 20% of its remaining damage. In some cases, I think you maybe would actually be happier with it consuming the disease, given that it then will deal double damage, especially if it's free for you to reapply it, right? Like if you're a Blood DK, you reapply your Blood Plague all the time by just pressing Blood Boil, which you do all the time. For Unholy, having to reapply Virulent Plague maybe could be annoying depending on the situation, right? Maybe that's something that's not, you don't have a global queued up for that for a while, but yeah, interesting effect here as well. Also, something this one offers potentially a little bit of gameplay to it, right? Like when you get a Vampiric Strike proc, you're going to know that your next Vampiric Strike, your next Heart Strike or Surge Strike is going to be a Vampiric Strike. Then you get this proc, and then if you're a Blood DK and you're tanking a mob and it only has 5 seconds of Blood Plague left on it for some reason, because you've been doing Irritation bad, you'll know you should press Blood Boil before pressing Heart Strike, so that you actually get a nice full-length disease to then consume and deal double damage with. I will say, the actual damage values, we've seen things that buff the value of stuff like Blood Plague before for Blood DK, and the base damage on it is low enough that it doesn't actually matter to do that, right? Like 200% of a small number is still such a small number that it often isn't worth optimizing around, so we'll see if that ends up being true for this as well. Then we have Visceral Regeneration. Your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike have a 3% chance per stack of Essence of the Blood Queen. Yeah, I assume that's 3% chance per stack of Essence of the Blood Queen to refund a rune. Vampiric Strikes doubles the chance to refund a rune. So Essence of the Blood Queen is something that we don't know about yet, right? Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure where you get Essence of the Blood Queen. I'm trying to look and see. Yeah, I don't see where that's coming from. Oh, no, it's this. Okay, yeah, it's the Vampiric Strike buff. I'm very stupid. Sorry about that. So this is the haste buff that you get when you press Vampiric Strike. So if you can actually maintain 5 stacks of that, then Heart Strike and Scourge Strike have a 15% chance to refund a rune, and Vampiric Strike has a 30% chance to refund a rune, which is a lot of free runes. But if I'm right about only maintaining an average of, say, 2 stacks over the course of an encounter, something like that, then instead this is a lot less valuable. I guess let's do the bottom talent here. And I think going forward, maybe I'll just do top and then bottom and then sides, because they've referenced this Gift of the Sand Lane ability already in one of the sides, so maybe that makes more sense. So Gift of the Sand Lane says, it's a passive. While Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation is active, you gain Gift of the Sand Lane. Interesting. Okay, so it's a controllable thing, not a proc. It increases the effectiveness of your Essence of the Blood Queen by 100% and replaces Heart Strike and Scourge Strike with Vampiric Strike for the duration. So this means you actually can get up to 5 stacks because you can just press this and then press 5 Heart Strikes or 5 Scourge Strikes, and they'll all be Vampiric Strikes, and so you can get that haste buff. And the haste buff is going from 7.5% to 15% while you are within these cooldowns. This is probably very good for Unholy, because stacking more haste into your Dark Transformation, that's exactly what you want, right? That's great. For Blood, on the other hand, you generally are already pretty indestructible inside Vampiric Blood, so you're going to be indestructible inside your Vampiric Blood, but it doesn't actually help you. I mean, I guess you'll then float a 5 stack of Essence of the Blood Queen out of your Vamp Blood window for a little while, so maybe you'll be tankier for a little bit after Vamp Blood falls off than you otherwise would have been, but this doesn't actually help you too much with your tankiness outside of Vampiric Blood, because it basically just amplifies your Vampiric Blood, which is, lower value than you'd think. Because for tanks, unlike for DPS, right? DPS like to multiply their cooldowns together, whereas tanks like to spread them out so that they can have something always rolling. And this doesn't really help too much with that. All right, let's read the middle branch of the tree. Blood-Soaked Ground says, while you're within your Death and Decay, your physical damage taken is reduced by 5%, and your chance to gain Vampiric Strike is increased by 5%, which I assume means 10% chance, or sorry, 15% chance instead of 10.5% chance, because that's usually what they mean with this. Yeah, cool. I mean, 5% physical DR inside your D&D is going to be huge for Blood DK. That's, 5% physical DR. There's already a couple talents like this just in the Blood DK tree as well. So I wonder if these are being moved out of the Blood DK tree and put here instead, or if you're just going to have both of them and be even more incentivized than you already are to stand in your D&D. I hope that they're taking this out of the blood tree and making it so that if you don't go Sand Lane, you don't have to stand inside your D&D anymore, because that is annoying. Frenzied Bloodthirst says Essence of the Blood Queen stacks 2 additional times. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're actually talking about almost a 20% haste, actually a 21% haste buff inside your Gift of the Sand Lane, and a 10.5% haste buff outside of it if you get full stacks. And again, the fact that you can actually get the proc chance up to 15 instead of 10% means the chance of rolling this buff goes up by quite a bit from my initial read of it. It stacks 2 additional times, and it increases the damage of your Death Coil and Death Strike by 5% per stack. Wow, okay, so you'll have 7 stacks of this if you can maintain a full 7 stack, which means that Death Strike will be doing 35% increased damage, and Death Coil will be doing 35% increased damage, which, at least for Blood Decay, Death Strike is one of your biggest damage sources, although you have a lot of stuff in that 10 to 20% of your damage range. Unholy, I don't think Death Coil is that huge of a source of their damage, but it is one of the more damaging abilities they have on single target, so, cool. I guess looking at this, yeah, this is definitely a single target themed tree for Unholy, right? Because of the interaction with Coil, right? Because you press Epidemic in AoE if you're building it, which I guess maybe you wouldn't do if you were playing Sand Lane. You just would. I'm not sure how that would end up working out. For Blood Decay, there's less of a concern there because you still just Death Strike in AoE because you don't have a AoE spender. Incite Terror says Heart Strike and Scourge Strike extend the duration of Essence of the Blood Queen by 0.5 seconds, and Vampiric Strikes increase the extension by 100% to 1 second. So again, this entire middle tree here is making it much easier to keep a full uptime Essence of the Blood Queen. With the combination of this extension, I actually think now, knowing what I know, yeah, you can probably just maintain Essence of the Blood Queen at full stacks. All right, over on the right-hand side, we have a choice node between Vampiric Aura and Bloody Fortitude. Vampiric Aura says your leech is increased by 3%. While Lichborn is active, the leech amount is increased by 100% and affects 4 nearby allies. So 6% leech for you and 4 nearby allies. It's a lot weaker than the old, Vampiric Aura from Legion artifact ability was, but it's still something. And it might still... 6% leech is not going to, top your party in the way that did, but it's something. Leech is not a very valuable stat for Blood Decay, but it's pretty nice for Unholy. 3% leech for Unholy is nice, and Lichborn becoming a sort of, pseudo raid or party CD off of it is also pretty cool. So yeah, I like that. The other option, though, is Bloody Fortitude, which says Icebound Fortitude reduces all damage you take by up to an additional 30% based on your missing health. Killing enemies that grant honor or experience reduces the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude by 3 seconds. That also seems powerful. Making Icebound Fortitude a stronger DR at low health is going to be nice. It means it'll be a button that you can press at 40% HP and it might save you, even whereas before you maybe needed to press it when you were topped to actually live through some incoming damage. Getting some cooldown reduction on it in Mythic Plus situations, for instance, could also be a little bit of value. But 30% more DR on it is a lot of more DR to gain on an effect like this, because it's going to matter the most when you are low on health, probably, and it's going to help you there. It's not going to help you at all in the situation of you're doing a high M plus key and you press IBF at 100% HP to survive a one-shot. But if there's ever anything that's one-shotting you through IBF at 100% HP, you were kind of screwed already. That level of damage doesn't tend to exist in doable keystones, right? Usually you live the one you IBF and you die the one that you have nothing for. All right, the next one is the Blood is Life. Vampiric Strike has a chance to summon a Blood Beast to attack your enemy for 10 seconds. Each time the Blood Beast attacks, it stores a portion of the damage dealt, and when it dies, it explodes, dealing 50% of the damage accumulated to nearby enemies and healing the Death Knight for the same amount. Crucially, it doesn't seem like there's text in here for this being AoE capped or doing reduced damage beyond 5 targets or anything like that, so this might be a nice effect, actually, for some AoE out of this tree. And again, this one also seems like it'll probably end up being a bigger percent gain for Blood than Unholy. Then finally, we have a final choice node between Sanguine Scent and Pact of the Sand Lane. Sanguine Scent says your Death Coil and Death Strike have a 15% chance to trigger Vampiric Strike when damaging enemies below 35% health, and it's guaranteed to critically strike. Okay, so Yeah, this is worded a little bit weird. What I'm interpreting this to mean is that the Vampiric Strike is guaranteed to critically strike when it triggers off of this. Um, and yeah, it's just basically you're going to press Death Coil or Death Strike, and if the enemy is below 35% chance, 15% of the time, you're going to get a free Vampiric Strike, and a different 15% of the time, you're going to get the proc that makes your next Heart Strike or Scourge Strike become a Vampiric Strike. And those are probably just independent 15% chances, so you could trigger either, both, or neither. But I'm not 100% sure. This seems like a nice little throughput increase, though, a nice little execute throughput increase. The other option is Pact of the Sand Lane, which says you store 50% of all shadow damage dealt into your Blood Beast to explode for additional damage when it expires. So this seems really good for like Unholy, especially in AoE situations. Whereas Sanguine Scent seems more like a kind of defaulty option, a single target option, and maybe more of a Blood Death Knight option, because, you know, doing a bunch of shadow damage in a short window is an Unholy thing, whereas Blood DK can't really do that as well. So I think the default here is probably going to be Sanguine Scent for Blood Death Knight, and Pact of the Sand Lane maybe for Unholy in AoE and M+ situations, and maybe just Sanguine Scent on single target still, although maybe you still just play Pact of the Sand Lane, because, you know, that basically makes it so that your Blood Beast procs are giving you 50% more shadow damage, which shadow damage is a lot of your damage is Unholy, right? So maybe it's just always Pact to the Sand Lane. Anyways, cool tree, interesting tree. Definitely does feel themed more around blood, but they've definitely thrown some bones to Unholy in here. And yeah, some powerful defensive options here for both builds, and some relatively interesting choice notes. And they've done a good job here of not adding a huge amount of new complexity to the spec. Like if you want to just take this as a bunch of passive benefits to your build, I think that's going to work out, which is nice. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below of Sand Lane. Over the next few hours, I plan to release videos like this for all of the other hero talent trees as well that have been spoiled today, the 4 of them. So yeah, we'll do that. Let me know what you think of these. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.